With one of the largest Jewish populations in the state of Michigan, there's a deep connection to Jewish history and culture here in West Bloomfield and in the greater West Bloomfield area. And soon, the Greater West Bloomfield Historical Society will take a deep dive into those long-standing connections between Detroit's Jewish community and historical roots dating back to the 1760s and our vibrant local Jewish community today in greater West Bloomfield. Here with a special preview of that conversation is Dr. Cangany, Executive Director of the Jewish Historical Society of Michigan in partnership with the Greater West Bloomfield Historical Society. Dr. Cangany, thanks for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
I appreciate having you on. This will definitely be of interest to many people in our community, not just those in our Jewish community, but those that really do appreciate the diversity and the different cultures that make up the population of greater West Bloomfield. And we know through some historical ties that Detroit has always had quite a robust Jewish community. But what are some of those uncommon connections you'll be exploring that brought that community from Detroit to our area close to home in greater West Bloomfield?
So a lot of people don't realize that Detroit's Jewish community is actually quite old. It dates to the 1760s. This is due to the fur trade that was the primary means of business in the 18th century, and that brought Jewish entrepreneurs, among others, to the city. And so really we begin with that, those early days when there were 0 synagogues in Michigan, very difficult to have a Jewish life in Michigan in the 1760s, to by the 1880s really being spoiled for choice. So it's a very interesting process by which you go from 0 synagogues to 1 to 2 to 5 to a whole panoply of synagogues.
And nowadays in greater West Bloomfield especially, you can go to any corner of our community and find a temple or find a synagogue. And if you're not in greater West Bloomfield proper, there are places nearby where people from our community may frequent in addition to their temple or because they need to go somewhere else with some family or some friends. That wasn't always the case. And so can you describe how Jewish life was impacted in greater West Bloomfield and other communities before some of these institutions like synagogues and temples were established?
Sure, it's a great question. So Detroit's first synagogue was not established until 1850. Wow. So for the 100 years before that, to be Jewish in Michigan was incredibly difficult. The closest synagogue was in New York City. During the American Revolution, when New York became a garrison town, the closest synagogue became Montreal. So these guys were leaving Michigan about 6 weeks before Rosh Hashanah, before the new year, each fall, so that they would have time to get to New York or Montreal for High Holy Day services. And there weren't even enough people for a minyan to hold Jewish religious services in Michigan in that period. So mostly we're talking about solitary religious practice. It would have been impossible to keep kosher. There are later anecdotes of fur traders being called eggmen because in the absence of kosher meat, they were eating hard-boiled eggs. So they certainly were flexing where they needed to flex to continue to be observant where they could be observant, but it was very difficult.
And so as you explore this history with the people of greater West Bloomfield and in partnership with the Historical Society, how do you draw those ties between modern day Jewish community and those past communities and sort of the ways that this very close-knit community that connects West Bloomfield to other places across Oakland County and across southeastern Michigan, but also connects to so many other additional cultures that make up the melting pot that we have in our community here?
Yeah, so speaking of Michigan geography, interestingly, the first Jewish religious society and the first Jewish cemetery in Michigan weren't in Detroit at all. They were in Ann Arbor. So in the 1840s, there was a robust traffic between Jewish people in Detroit, in Ypsilanti, in Ann Arbor, and elsewhere. So it's a very interesting network that really dates to the 19th century. And then we see sort of similar trajectories between the Jewish community, the Chaldean community, the Black community. One of my favorite statistics from this lecture that we're giving on February 18th is that we usually talk about the Jewish community outgrowing a space and the Black community moving in. And actually, Detroit's second congregation, Sharet Zedek, purchased its first building in the 1860s from a Black church. So there's a complication of that normal, usual pattern that we talk about.
This presentation will be Wednesday, February 18th, 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. at the West Bloomfield Township Public Library. It is free to attend, so all you got to know, Wednesday, February 18th, 7 p.m. is when it starts at the main library in West Bloomfield. More information is on gwbhs.org. And Dr. Cangany, as I think about this and I look at some of those key dates, you mentioned that the earliest Jewish populations in Michigan were starting to come into our state in the 1760s. And then, we know that, and we know from your research too, that a lot of the population later on in those first couple hundred years of the population being here surged in the 1880s. Certainly a lot of people came over during the World War II era. And as you have that crossover, you mentioned the Chaldean community, the black community, so many of these different demographics that had experienced some sort of treachery, some sort of conflict in the U.S. and certainly in the state of Michigan, and now they're all connected in places like Greater West Bloomfield. How does that sort of similar history of conflict and resolution and perseverance, do you believe, connect these communities today so strongly as they are?
I think it's a great time to be talking about it as we're gearing up for America's 250th anniversary and the work of the revolution that is ongoing. And we talk about the reasons that the Jewish community and other communities have come to the United States over the years, and what being in the United States has meant for them, but also the work that needs to continue towards equal rights and getting rid of discrimination. So there certainly is a lot of resonance among those populations' experiences in the United States.
Dr. Catherine Cangany is with us, the Executive Director of the Jewish Historical Society of Michigan. They will be partnering with the Greater West Bloomfield Historical Society on Wednesday, February 18th at the West Bloomfield Township Public Library for an exploration of the history of Detroit's Jewish community at the library on that evening, exploring history all the way back from 1762 into the modern day today. And what I love about these presentations, Dr. Cangany, is it's not just a presentation. You're putting up slides on a PowerPoint and you're discussing this time in history. Here are the 1760s, here are the 1880s, here are the 1930s, and so on and so forth. It's an open discussion where you can, like we just did, contextualize our history to the modern day. As we approach the 250th anniversary of our country here in the United States, how important is it, in your opinion, as a historian, for people, regardless of their demographics, regardless of if they're in Michigan, Greater West Bloomfield, or any place else in the U.S., explore that history and how it connects to what we are undergoing in the modern world today?
Well, certainly history is really unparalleled for explaining the why and the so what. Beyond the facts, really understanding why the facts matter and are resonant for us today. So I think the Jewish community's stories of immigration and experiencing anti-Semitism and acculturating and the work to assimilate but also maintain a distinct Jewish identity. These are all lessons that are relevant for us in 2026 as we're thinking about immigration and what it means to be a plural society. So looking to the past can be extremely helpful in that way.
And as we get ready for this presentation, it's open to everybody in the community, not just the local Jewish population that I'd imagine would be very interested in learning their own history. Whether it's this presentation or there's others coming up for the Historical Society about the history of local black history and other specific organizations and groups and demographics in our community. Why is it important for us to cross over outside of maybe our comfort zone, our individual demographic communities, to learn those histories and those ties to our community as well?
Well, we certainly can't understand where we're going and try to make the world a better place without understanding where we are and why where we are. One of the things I love about West Bloomfield is its diversity. It's great to get to know your neighbors from all different walks of life, from all different kinds of backgrounds, and it enriches the community so that we are all together and understanding one another. So this lecture absolutely is in the spirit of cultivating neighborliness and understanding.
Dr. Catherine Cangany is with us, the Executive Director of the executive director of the Jewish Historical Society of Michigan. They will be partnering with the Greater West Bloomfield Historical Society on February 18th. That's a Wednesday evening at the West Bloomfield Township Public Library. Find information on that and other special presentations from the Greater West Bloomfield Historical Society on gwbhs.org. Before we let you go, Dr. Cangany, as people get ready for this presentation and certainly the robust conversation that will happen before and after that presentation, what do you hope that they bring with them that could make that conversation as impactful as possible for them and for others in attendance that evening?
Curiosity would be my biggest wish. Be curious about your neighbors and who they are and what they bring to the table, and also an open mind. One of the great things about what I get to do for a living is meeting all different kinds of people and understanding our common humanity, even in our different life experiences. So there absolutely is an opportunity for that here.
We appreciate your time today previewing this special presentation. Hopefully plenty of people in our community will have a chance to learn about one of our largest populations, our largest demographics in Greater West Bloomfield, and get a little bit of context to help them learn and explore our world today as well. That's what history is all about. Dr. Cangany, thank you for your time.
Thank you.